Well, it seems like forever since I've posted something here. Sorry about that. It's taken a while because we actually moved from video conferencing like we were doing, where everybody got together and we were doing 5 turns a week, 3 to 5, and we went into a play by email. And we changed the players out. You knew that, 3 of them. But one of the players, seemed to be moving a couple times, and he worked nights, and you know, life stuff like that was happening, and he was very slow to respond in a lot of our situations, and that was the Russian player, and so he agreed to be replaced, so we have a replacement now. So hopefully things go a lot faster. Anyways, I'm just showing you the Army cards of the way it looks in October 1808, where I left off in the last video. And I also want to talk about some uh, complaints, get the complaints out of the way, or some gamey issues. Now, the reason I'm going over these is because, and showing new players what's happening here, because I get a lot of responses from new players because they really like to see how the game is played. So one thing here is what they call is the cycle. When the game starts, the French are usually going to fight the Austrians and the Prussians together. The Austrians and the Prussians will be allied. And so he has to fight them both at the same time. Well, if he defeats them and they surrender to him, he can set up a cycle. In other words, you automatically have to go into an 18-month enforced peace. In other words, these countries can't fight each other for 18 months. However, in the surrender terms, the French can extend that to 24 months or 36 months on one of these countries. And that's what you'll do as the French. You will extend it and get one of these countries will not be able to fight you for 2 years or 3 years while you turn around and in 18 months just fight Austria or Prussia by itself and defeat it before you turn around and fight the other guy. And that way you only have to fight them one at a time. Now, it starts me off with some gamey issues I want to tell you guys about what I'm learning so far. And one of them was, you can see the picture here between the French and the Prussians. Well, the minor countries were being owned by the Prussians or the Austrians. And so when the second war was going to start between the French and the Prussians, what the Prussians did was cede any minor countries they owned here, Hesse, duchies, Hanover, to the Austrians. That way the Austrians controlled these minor countries. And now for the French to attack the Prussians, they had to walk through an Austrian-controlled minor country. This brings up what we call forcible access, which is not in the rule book. They got it down as 10.3.4. My rule book ends at 10.3.3, something. But forcible access allows a country to go ahead and move through other countries without the express permission of the controlling player, and you deduct some political points. However, it also goes through like the minor country rules of 10.3.1.1, which allows that country who controls that minor to immediately declare war. So therefore, if the Austrians control all these and the French walk through them to attack Prussia, the Austrians can now declare war on the French, and the Austrians and the Prussians have their united countries again fighting the French. So that to me, so they do go over ceding rules also in wherever they put this forcible access. They came up with it like in the general or some other rule book. They also covered ceding, like you don't have to allow the ceding rules, like so people can't do that either. So this is kind of stuff you're going to have to look at before you play the game. And another thing that's kind of gamey with the ceding was when I was losing and ready to surrender to the British, Austrians, and Prussians, I started ceding my African territories to the French. Therefore, I didn't want the Austrians and the British to get control of these. So that's kind of gamey, and I didn't know there was any rule against the ceding. I didn't find out about this ceding rule or forcible access till well after this. I didn't even know those rules existed. So I'm telling you, they do have rules to deal with this stuff. Now, another gamey thing we can see happening in our game was placing depots in areas, just not because you needed them there, but just to prevent the other player from being able to place a depot there, because that's against the rules. So like the British player Thomas, he was telling me he could have sent all his 7 ships around the coast of my country and just placed depots there, and it would prevent me from placing depots there. But he said that was pretty gamey, and he didn't do it. He's pretty cool when it comes to gaming stuff. Because the reason why I was placing some depots out there was with the retreat rules. And that's another rule you guys are going to have to cover. Cover the retreat rules, because if you have depots sitting in the water, that you could retreat toward those depots. So that's why I would do that. Well, the British would build all these depots out there and prevent me from putting my depots there, and then I wouldn't be able to retreat and basically lose my cores. But that was real gamey, and he didn't do it. Another spot that was gamey that I know the Austrians and the Prussians and British were conceding, but it was too gamey and Thomas didn't want to do it, was before the French started their second war with the Prussians, the Austrians could have laid down all these depots in the Prussian territory, because he's allowed access to his allies' country if he's given permission, and he can place these depots down. And then the French, if they don't go to the war with the Austrians, they're not allowed to attack him, and now he can't place depots, so it would really hamper his offensive operations. So these kind of stuff to me are very gamey, and we ought to come up with some rules how to deal with that, because they did that to me also in my war. Remember, they had the Russians, who I just surrendered to and should have just left my country. He was building depots in my country and supplying those guys still, and I couldn't do anything about it. So that kind of stuff is real gamey, and we got to find a way to fix that and come up with something with that. And then you already know what I feel about Rule 12.4, the limited access. I believe this fixes those type of rules when it comes to surrendering. You surrender, and then you allow a guy to walk out of your country, and you specifically go over the details of what he can and cannot do as he's leaving your country and what territories he can enter. That's all covered during this 12.4 limited access rule. That should be discussed before you play. And then the other argument we got into this round was sieges, just the way the rules are written. And so you might want to cover your siege rules before you play. Now, God bless Ragnar. He came up with some, I think, 200, questionnaire about how to settle all the rules that he figured there was problems with. And I answered about 100 of them of what I felt the rules meant, and then I stopped. I just couldn't do anymore. It's like it was worse than the rule book. It's like, if a game has this many problems, then, why are we playing it? So, personally, I don't think there's that many issues, and there's probably most of them you guys can just work out and get away with. But some of these important ones that I'm seeing causing a problem, I'm just passing on to you. So that's it for that, and I'll start showing you what's happening in our game here. So you just got through looking at the Army cards as of 1808 in November or October, and another chart that we follow is who was at war with each other. You just got through looking at, and you can see the only war that was going on now was the coalition, who just kicked my butt, is now going after Spain, and they're doing the right thing. They're getting me out of the way, plus I was winning, and now they're going to get the Spanish out of the way, and they're going to put these extended pieces on us, so we can't interfere with their fights anymore. So, good move. And then they're going to deal with the French on their own. So the British, they went to war with the Spanish real quick. The Austrians and the Prussians have been at war with the Spanish for like 2 years, but they never fought each other. Nobody ever cared to send troops anywhere. The Austrians couldn't reach them, and vice versa. So the English declared war, and the whole fighting started revolving around Barcelona here. And you can see the English invading from Portugal. As long as Cadiz was protected, the battles at Barcelona, there was 2 at least, I think. And even though the English, I think, won some, or most, he might have lost one, I can't remember, but even though he won, he barely won, and the English were losing a lot of troops. So that's always a good thing to see. Remember, when you're fighting somebody, there's 3 things that we want to accomplish. One is to make countries like England and Austria lose as many troops as you can. And 2, hit them in their pocketbook. Okay, make them spend that money. So, and then try not to give them extra political points. But sometimes that's kind of goes with hand in hand of what you're trying to accomplish and make them lose troops. Anyways, so it revolved around here, and the Spanish hung on for 4 or 5 turns, and until the English transported some Austrians over, and you can see them here in this area right above Barcelona, and then the Spanish finally decided to offer surrender. Now for the new guys, you have to pay attention to the surrender rules too. The biggest things I'm learning here is when you surrender, you have to surrender to everybody you're at war with if there's no enemy units inside your home country. However, if you are surrendering to somebody that's in your home country, then you can just surrender that person in your home country by himself and not surrender to the other one. So for example, the Spanish here are at war with the British, the Prussians, and the Austrians. Well, the Spanish can just say, I'm going to surrender to the British when the British were there by themselves, and not to the Austrians and Prussians. But so that's one of the reasons why I'm sure the Austrians came over to help out, maybe. Plus to fight. If the Spanish wanted to keep fighting, they had to show force. But that way, so if the Spanish surrender, they have to surrender to the British and the Austrians now, because they came up with a real cushy surrender deal. Because sometimes peace overtures start getting thrown back and forth before you actually surrender. And, one country will say, hey, if I surrender to you, will you take it easy on me? See, like when I surrendered to these guys, they took everything they could from me. So they basically, threw me on the side of the French for the most part for doing that. Where here, the Spanish got a real cushy deal. They hardly did anything to the Spanish. They didn't take his fleet. They didn't do anything to him. So the Spanish got off real nice there. Now, the reasons for doing that could be he was just a new player. He just came in. It wasn't his fault, the state that Spain was in, and they could have just let him slide. And second, if you take the Spanish fleets off the board, well, basically Spain's worthless after that. And I don't know if the coalition wanted that, to be like that. So there could be several reasons why, but he got a nice cushy deal. Matter of fact, every surrender that's been going on this board, everybody's been getting nice cushy deals. For example, and this was already talked about in the last video, but it's been so long, I'm just reminding you guys. When I was at war with the Austrians and the Prussians, and then the British, the French went to war their second time with the Prussians first, because they had a cycle going, and the Prussians didn't put up a fight. They just surrendered right away. They made a nice cushy deal. And then when he went to war with the Austrians did the same. They came up with this nice cushy deal, because I specifically asked the French to just go down to Italy and take all the Austrian territory and not enter Austria. And what do you know, the next turn he marched one corps into Austria, and the Austrians surrendered to him. They came up with a deal. And this is why this game is so good that way, the intrigue and the diplomacy. He's doing what's right for him, and I do what's right for me. So everybody was getting cushy deals here except for me, and that kind of turned the game a little bit, I think. Now from after this point on, there's going to be no more cushy deals. No one's getting cushy deals anymore because it's getting later in the game, so you're going to start getting raped now. Now what we're looking at here is we're into 1809 January, just starting at December, either 1808 January 1809. The Prussian forces, remember I had just surrendered a turn or two ago. The Prussians and the Austrians repatriated their forces back to their country. So they're sitting, you see how they're all grouped right there in the bottom? The French are grouping there. The third war between the Prussians is going to start right now. Now you can see the French are already in Prussia because after the second surrender, the French got access as a surrender term. So he's all over Prussia and he's ready to go. Now here's another crazy thing that the Russian player doing. After the Russian broke my alliance, declared war on me, he is supposed to be in with the coalition. But see, the coalition didn't like that he broke the alliance, surrendered to me. He wasn't supposed to accept a surrender just for me without the other guys, but he did. And he did that as, a gesture toward me. And he got out of the war. And here, the Russian was supposed to help the Prussians protect one last territory against the French, which would have probably been at Königsberg, and they should have had a big stand there. However, the French, seeing this, or expecting this, he went ahead and declared war not on the Prussians, but on the Russians. And he was going to do that to prevent, you can see the Russian corps right here in Germany. He felt the Russians were going to start establishing garrisons all over Prussia, and then it would be tough for the French to, get control of these territories. So he declared war on the Russians, a preemptive strike to prevent the Russians to do that. And then all they did was fight over Sweden. And I got to say, Andy, he's a good player, but he is having terrible luck. I don't think he won a battle up there. And, he didn't get Sweden. And I don't think he's won a major battle yet in this game. It's very weird. So his luck is about, should change. But that's all they did was fight over Sweden, have a couple battles, and then the Russians surrendered to the French. So the Russian moves here are highly suspect of what he's doing. So he surrenders to the French, and then the French and Prussians start fighting, and the Prussians are they run to Austria, which was expected because the French aren't at war with Austria, so he's hiding the troops. So the French are going to capture every territory that the Prussians have and force a surrender, because we use that optional rule. We use an optional rule about once all the territories are captured, you're not out of the game, you just surrender. But you can see the Prussians are moving their forces around, and they decided to try to hold on to some coastal cities, and the English would be there. You can see the ships are in port there. Would be there to support the Prussians with their ships. The French quickly seized these sieges. This is where the argument on the sieges came in, but they quickly took it over. And then the Russians break their alliance with the Austrians. Now remember, the Russians were allied with me and the Austrians, and he breaks these alliance and declares war. So the Russians have now declared war on Austria, and you can see him making his move there. So it's hard to trust the Russian player at this point. So just to interject here with a status card. It's March 1809, and look how the game has reversed. The Spanish, the Turks, I've been economic manipulating +2 the whole time because I have to get back up in this chart, because you have to collect so many victory points a game or you're not going to have a chance. And again, part of this game, what's good about it is you have to decide Okay, am I spending my money and my manpower points on this economic manipulation, or should I be building troops? Now, as Turkey, I don't have a big issue with troops because I have all the feudal cores, but I still like to have a nice Turkish regular army. So if you look at my Turkish card here, you can see all my feudal cores got decimated here. Um, you know, I have no troops left in a lot of them, and you can see these three here. I have one guy left, two guys. The only thing I tried not to lose was the cavalry, but look at the Turkish regular army. I tried not to lose those. Now, I lost the Nazimi Corps because I went for a last-ditch battle. I had a 50-50 chance of winning it, and I lost, and I hung him out there to dry. But that's the only regular Turkish troops I lost, was basically in that corps and then some garrisons. But I try not to lose the regular Turks, and that's why you can see I still have a nice Turkish army here. But that's the difficulty anyways, deciding of how to spend your manpower and your money. So you can see here on the card when I surrendered in 1808 October where I was, and this is up in March 1809 where I'm at, and that's due to spending my money and manpower on economic manipulation. Anyways, back. So I'm showing you the maps of kind of Africa here, even though I don't have all the African countries, but the Russians owned Egypt, and the Austrian, when he declared war on the Austrians went down and took it, and then the Austrians owned Syria, and the Russians, you can see here, are marching one of their corps down this way, and look at the Russian corps in Turkey. You know, he just asked me to build a depot for him. I said, okay, and he's heading that way. Now, I don't know what these players are thinking, but I'm just looking at this and going, okay, is he trying to spread the Austrian army out a little? But it's too little to really make an impact on anything. So I'm not sure of the moves, but I just wanted to show you. So the Russians are built up there. You saw their big force in East or West Galicia, and then he's moving some corps here. So the Austrians and the Russians are fighting. So I want to show you the card here. Again, it used to be the Turks, Spanish, and Russians were on top, and the Austrians and Prussians and English and French were down below. And now it's totally switched. The Austrians, look at the Austrians and the English, and the Prussians are up top now. And the French have been coming back up, and the Russians, Spanish, and the Turks are way down. So that's what the coalition did to us. Good moves, good play on their part. The Austrian has quite an empire going. All of Italy, Egypt, Syria, and we're going to see how they handle this war with the French and the Russians. Now, the French aren't at war with them yet, but just I'm expecting the French to join in. I don't know, but we'll see what happens there. So take a look at the British fleet, their transport sitting in the water now. Thomas is a good player. He's ready. He's ahead of the game. And when the Russians declared war on the Austrians called the British for to be allies, to join the war, and the British accepted. And what did the British do? They go pounce on Sweden. The forces that the Russians had up there were just a token little force, and he tried to fight the British and got wiped out. I think there was 3 Swedish fleets and they got scuttled. So that's what happened. Now the British own, quite an empire with Sweden and Denmark and Holland and Algeria, Tunisia, and then the islands in the Med, some islands. Quite an empire these guys have. So this is basically a year's worth of gameplay. We're at September 1809, and the Prussians are forced to surrender. All their territories, capitals have been occupied. And so another little gamey thing that happens, I mean, it's not that bad though, everybody does it, is a few turns ago the British declared war on the Prussians. Now, they do that so when the Prussians are forced to surrender, the French can't just rape the Prussians with all kinds of hard and defeating type of surrender terms. The British step in and block that. And so, like for example, when Prussians surrender, the French get to choose first, and they choose access to their country. So now the British can't choose that, but the British step in and chose to remove the Prussian fleet, which they have one ship. They build one ship to help transport men around for the English and for stuff like this. They can easily destroy it. It's not a big deal to them. But now the French can't pick to remove Prussian corps or armies off the board. And then you can't remove Blucher because both powers that Prussia surrendered to, the British and the French, would have to agree to that. They would have to pick that. So the British aren't going to do that. So that's why the British steps in. It's a gamey thing, obviously. I mean, you didn't do that historically, but, it ain't a historical game. But, it's a tactic you use. So the Prussians did have to surrender. The French will collect political points and royal marriage for it. He picked that also. So this is what the map looks like at the end. The big fights that's going to happen now is because the Russians declared war on the Prussians also like 2 turns ago. So, the Russians have declared broken alliance with the Turks, declared war, broken alliance with the Austrians, declared war, and now have broken alliance with Prussians and declared war. So they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But now we have a new Russian player starting this turn, or last turn. So he's trying to get acclimated with the game, trying to figure out what's going on here. So now that this new Russian player has his own mindset and is not a die-hard French supporter, things may be different. But you can see here in the north, the game plan is going to be what the English are going to do because they're at war with the Russians. The Russians are now at war with the British, the Prussians, and the Austrians. The French are at war with nobody. So it depends what the French are going to do. Most likely they may declare war on Austria. But I think the coalition is looking forward to this gang up on Russia because they want to get Russia out of the way now because they can't trust them. And he's foiling their plans. However, there's a new Russian player, so they're going to try to probably come to terms with the new Russian player. And if they can't, then they'll probably continue to try to take him out seriously. And so the French, if they declare war on Austria to help out, he can't enter Austria's territory because the Austrians will just surrender to the French and continue their war on Russia. So what the French should do, I think he should do, is go around and take every territory the Austrians control and not enter the home country like I asked him to do with me with the Turks. That's what I think he should do. And then the Austrians can just choose to surrender to the French, but now he would have to surrender to the Russians also because nobody's in his home country. So he probably wouldn't do that. He'd probably let the French take the territories while they annihilate Russia, unless they can come to some terms with the new Russian player. So we'll see. But the British are in a good spot here to move north or to move along the coast of Prussia. So we'll see what the British do. It'll be really interesting to see the British next move, to see what direction they're going in. So this is the way the board looks right now in the southern part. This is the Prussian and Austrian army. And it looks like they're gathering ready to stop the French. Maybe they're going to fight the French here if the French attack the Austrians. I don't know what's really going to happen there, but I'm under the impression that they want the Russians, and I believe they'll probably turn around and go after the Russians and do that scenario I already talked about if the French enter Austria. But as far as the Prussian forces go, now this is a role thing that we may have to discuss about, but they can't be repatriated back to Prussia, but we'll see what happens with that. Because if they try to do that, they can put those forces anywhere they want against Russia. But other than that, if they try to march back and deal with the Russians, if the Prussians try to march back and deal with the Russians in his country, obviously he can get the Austrians to help. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways we can go right now, but I know that they're not happy with the Russians, and they would love to isolate the Russians like they did to the Turks and the Spanish. They put this extended peace on them. If they do that to the Russians and they extend their peace to 2 years or 3 years, that leaves the Russians, the Turks, and the Spanish out of interfering with the Austrians and the Prussians and the English, where they can defeat the French. So that probably will be their game plan. But it's curious, it's really fun for me to see how this plays out. And here's a look at our status card before the September eco phase, which is what we're starting right now. So the French are going to move up a few. They're going to get 5, 6, 7. They're going to get 7 political points here, and I'm going to move up 3. So I'll be in the neutral zone. So the French and the Turks will go up. The Spanish will move. Everybody's going to go up a little bit. The Prussians will go down. But that's what it looks like for now. Looks like everybody still, as far as I'm concerned, has a pretty good shot at this game.